The Diary of Thoughts, Part 28. Silence and Introspection. Written by Carlos Pacheco, www.diaryofthoughts.com. In my humble opinion, there is no real silence in life, as everything around us has its dynamics of existence. If we think carefully, there is even the sound of our thoughts while concentrating on something, the sound of our inner voice that makes reasoning. Nobody can say that I'm thinking about nothing, because it's just impossible. While dreaming, we're thinking in silence, even if we don't remember what we dreamed about. The notions about silence that we have are far away from reality, as we mix the need to be concentrated in our inner peace along with the meaning of that word. In fact, if there were absolute silence, it would mean that we weren't living, reasoning, capturing the energy and sounds of nature herself, of life after all. Silence also implies the necessity of abstraction, the need to acquire a certain balance to our ideas and thoughts, or get far away from events and things that might affect us in a negative way. Silence can imply concern while we're thinking about the best way to solve a problem, for instance, meaning that silence is related with our thoughts, as these last ones are present in every second of our existence. Silence can be used in a very positive or negative way, as its utilization is connected to attitudes of wisdom or detachment from facing real problems in life. Silence is also related to the reaction against aggression, meaning sometimes submission, others the cleverest way to fight against it. Silence can also become a powerful weapon, as it creates an empty environment where communication stops at the desired moment. Also, silence can create doubts among numerous areas, as relationships, business, even in war contexts. In fact, during wartime, silence can create strategic insecurity in terms to decide how to fight against our enemy, sometimes becoming our best weapon. In business it is the same thing, as there are multiple strategic behaviors related to each particular context, so the same happens regarding relationship. Silence can have its own sound. Introspection is a word that is related to concentration and self-analysis, finding or trying to find our inner me, and depending on our honesty and courage to admit our mistakes, faults and failures. Introspection is usually practiced in silence, but not forcibly. Multiple answers and results are the result coming from introspection, some of them positive, others negative. Positive ones can bring us reassurances and self-esteem, others can lead us to states of frustration, even delusion, depending on our self-honesty and at what point we want to research that space of your mind, our inner me. That's why introspection is as complex as it is very subjective, and it always stays dependent on our perceptions. As I told you before, introspection is related with silence, and while doing it there are several states of mind that makes part of it. Once, I wrote about silence and a lot of those elements that are implicated in that word as doubts, fears and ghosts and frustrations, etc. Hank the Voice Bukima reads from the Diary of Thoughts poems, written by Carlos Pacheco.
Silence. Silence. Staying behind your mind, avoiding you to find the answers that finally you're looking for, or just pretend to ignore. Silence. Making noise, the sound of your voice, making you fight, strike against yourself, nothing else. Silence. Bringing you happiness or pain, depending on the drop of rain that makes you cry, or the light coming from the sky that makes you smile. Silence, as a way to be anywhere, or simply don't care anymore. Silence, making you run away from reality, or finding your personality, discovering yourself. Silence, avoiding words that sometimes you're willing to say, but instead, you just stay in silence.
There are not a lot of people who can do introspection, as it implies their will to find about their truth. The typical reaction of people is to try to ignore their reality, mixing wrong concepts as I am who I am, and the act of introspecting within themselves is a positive way to know about it, even if there are some bad conclusions included on it. In fact, and as it happens in almost everything we do in life, it is only by understanding the facts and the elements that are involved that we can reach to a conclusion. The only difference is that this introspection concerns you and nobody else, though harder than to simply examine, judge or criticize everything and everybody around us. That's why we used to say take a look at yourself in the mirror, before judging or criticizing others. And it is true. Introspection is necessary to achieve knowledge about ourselves, and by doing so, we are naturally evolving in our spirits, correcting our character, finally bringing well-being to ourselves and others around. Introspection is a frame of mind connected with thinking, with intelligence, finally with personal wisdom. After all, we just can't live in absolute silence, as it doesn't exist. While thinking in silence, we are listening to our voice, meaning that even our thoughts have their sound. There is also a necessity to hear the sounds that is translated by the presence of music in our lives. Music implies audio frequencies that are not related to silence but so fundamental to us that it is an element that became a constant in our daily living. While dreaming, we're listening to sounds, living a virtual reality in our spirits that has its dynamics, its life. Once again, silence is just not present. Sounds are frequently related to images and dreams, which are nothing but both of them, as they finally represent a replica of our existence, a copy of our imagination and our daily experiences, even if they are merely virtual. By reading my book, you can verify that I believe in the afterlife, as it would be too illogic to be born condemned to die. Life is a matter of logic, energy and feelings after all. In this perspective, I am genuinely convinced that not even in this afterlife, we'll be living in complete silence. There will always be sounds that will be directly connected to that new environment where we'll be living. While generating electricity, we can listen to the sound of energy, which means that multiple frequencies are present and at the same time invisible, even though man invented accurate instruments to identify them. That technology allows us to identify the unheard sounds of an environment that are not acknowledged to our audio perceptions, but that it is a proof of its existence. The same way that science reached the conclusion that there is no empty space out there, as even the invisible occupies a space, sounds are present everywhere, and they include their structure, their dynamics, finally their life. Science got to the conclusion there is a light behind the dark, though what was not visible is finally filled with something, after all, filled with bright, the light of life, the light, the energy of Mother Creation. Somehow, everything is linked, as nothing is lost in creation. After all, we are nothing but a perpetual presence in the middle of multiple elements that completes a universal scheme, a universal architecture that is present everywhere at the same time, at the same moment in time and space. We all deal with our limitation of knowledge and not being able to understand the whole context of this whole thing that involve us all and to which we make an intrinsic part of it, and that is intentionally done, as everything has a final purpose in life. If it weren't like that, this dimension wouldn't be as it is. Maybe better or worse, we'll never know. Maybe it's that final doubt that will make the final selection between us all, human beings, creating the difference between being simply living or finally feeling the meaning of the only thing that exists out there, far away from the visible, and that some people call it as faith or religion. However, the misinterpretation of those words can lead to extreme behaviors and attitudes that can affect in a negative way the needed relationship that is supposed to exist. Silence is the best weapon of the wise, as in silence and staying in silence, we can think clearly and at the same time absorb what's going on around us, feel the energy, good and bad, finally understand more and more about our existence and comprehend the existence of other elements around us. At the limit, there is even the sound of our conscience that is constantly talking with us. As a matter of fact, we'll be talking with ourselves, with our inner me, about what we are, what we think, what we feel, what we resent. Finally, about what we represent as human beings, as a unique soul in this universe, still making part of this invisible balance where we all belong. There is no life in absolute silence, as we are living according to the sounds of creation. The Diary of Thoughts, end of part 28. Written by Carlos Pacheco, www.diaryofthoughts.com.